Welcome to Beyond the Glory, the podcast that takes you deeper into the untold stories, raw moments, and defining victories that shape the world of sport. I'm your host, John Walland, and each fortnight I bring you candid conversations with athletes, coaches, and trailblazers who go beyond the headlines to reveal the real grind behind the glory. If you enjoy what you hear, make sure to like, share, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us grow and keeps these incredible stories coming your way. Don't forget to follow Beyond the Glory on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more ways to connect with the show. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, tag us, or join the conversation wherever you're listening or watching. Let's go beyond the glory together.
Known for many, many years, of course, an absolute iconic figure, a very modest gentleman in all respects as well. Joel, thank you very much indeed for joining me here. Lovely to be able to chat to you on our podcast, of course, Beyond the Glory. And I thought I would just kind of start off by asking you, have you ever been camping with an auctioneer?
You've been getting too tough, have you? He's a naughty boy. I once told that story and implicated him in some skullduggery, and he's never let me forget it. I saw him last week, actually, and he raised it again. So it obviously plays on his mind, the poor man.
Well, I can't believe it. I actually spoke to him just a couple of minutes ago and told him that I was chatting to you. He said, please send my fondest wishes as well. But he said, I must ask you about an interesting story when the two of you went camping. Can you tell us about it?
So I'll tell you the story. It's I told the story about him being the villain, the culprit, but it's I guess it's more of a joke really, and it's about to cut a long story short, it's about if the thing is that you sort of would say if you woke up out in the bush with a the listeners are going to have to forgive me here, but you've put me in the spot now. With the used condom inside your body, would you tell anyone? And I said no, and Joff said, do you want to go camping?
And that's it.
And that's it. It's just, there was just a funny...
Well, thank you for sharing that. I had to get that question out to you. And that's, of course, Joff and Renan, a well-known auctioneer who we all know quite well. Yeah, I'm sure from an auctioneering...
He does an enormous amount for charity, and that's, I think, the wonderful thing about him. He's really good at what he does. He's don't tell him, but he's a good guy, and we all have a lot of respect for him and a lot of respect for what he does.
Yeah, we do, and it's quite interesting from an auctioneering point of view, because I went to an auction the other night, and I mean, just before we get into our big discussion, but it's fascinating. I mean, how can you the way that he talks, it's so fast, isn't it, that you really, I think you need training to be a participant in an auction, Joel.
Yeah, and it's not just about speaking fast, because I think anyone can speak fast. You can shove numbers out there and you can repeat the number. It's about entertaining the audience, keeping them engaged, keeping them interested. And it's one thing to be at an auction where everyone's trying to buy a car or a buffalo or whatever it is. But when you're selling something for charity and half the room are going, can't we get onto this so we can have the prize giving at golf, or can we go and get dinner or whatever it is? And the other half are going, well, that's a nice painting, maybe we'll buy it. To keep everyone engaged and everyone interested and get a great price for those items is not easy. He does it really, really well.
As a matter of interest, I would imagine, I mean, so much of your memorabilia highly sought after. Have you ever come across situations where you've seen something with supposedly from you that you didn't even know about, that just appeared from somewhere? I'm sure.
So not so much on the auction, not so much as auction items, but I went into a suite at Loftus a few years ago, and this guy was so chuffed to have my jersey on the wall signed by me, and he said, we paid a lot of money for it, and we're so proud of the fact that your jersey's on the wall here in our suite. And I looked at it and I said, well, firstly, it can't be my jersey because my jersey is at a home in my house. Exactly. And secondly, that's definitely not my signature, so it's definitely not my jersey. No, and it was tough because I didn't, it was terrible to burst his bubble.
Yes.
But he also, I guess, needed to know that he'd been conned and ripped off, and someone was impersonating my kit and my autograph. It does happen though.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I've heard lots of stories in the past, and really, you need to get stuff authenticated. That's really the bottom line, I suppose. But you kind of trust in the people that are auctioning off the goods, don't you?
Yeah, especially when there's a charity involved, and
Yeah.
because more often than not, when it's being auctioned, there's a charity element to it. So, especially when there's a charity involved, you have faith and trust. But I think what we've learned in the last few years, by half the phone calls we get every day, is there's a lot of rogues out there. There's a lot of phishing. There's a lot of scams. You just have to be careful.
Joel, congratulations on competing and completing. Time really does fly, but I mean, few take up the challenge, few meet it. But wow, the Cape Epic, we know the Absa Cape Epic is an absolute grueling affair. And I mean, you've done it 14 times. That's absolutely amazing. Well done.
John, so it's a wonderful journey. That's the thing. That's why I'm so addicted. Everyone looks and goes, "Oh, it's 8 days of torture and hell, and why do you do it?" But it's not. It's 6 months of training with like-minded people, with your friends, going away on, cycle training camps. It's about lifestyle, getting healthy and strong. It's about diet and training, and it's a journey. And then you get there and you have this 8 days, which are tough, but you share the journey with another, 800 teams that are out there. Everyone's suffering together. It's a wonderful journey, and I love the journey. I've loved every single epic I've done, and I know there've been a lot. My wife tells me it's the longest midlife crisis ever, but because I said it was going to just be one, and it's now 14, and I'm definitely going to do it again next year. But it's a privilege to be part of it, and it's just such a wonderful journey, man.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, it's almost like comrades, when people go and run one comrades and then they end up doing a second one and then they go on to do the event multiple times. It's wonderful, and credit to you. How does your fitness now, training for the Absa Cape Epic, compare to when you were playing for the Springboks, for example, Joel?
So I think it's a very different type of fitness. It's rugby fitness is very short, sharp. It's anaerobic. There's a lot of strength involved. Training's very different, and it's about taking a big knock, making a big tackle, getting up and going again. Where for cycling, triathlon, Ironman, epic, it's more about the endurance side. It's more about being able to go, for 5 or 6 hours and be comfortable going for 5 or 6 hours. So it's a different type of fitness. I'd guess in fitness terms, to be able to do 16, 18 and a big weeks, 22, 24-hour weeks, it's a lot of training, and I guess you would assume then that you're fitter, but it's a different type of fitness, a different type of strength training.
Do you feel stronger in any particular aspect now compared to those rugby days?
Well, I feel stronger in that I can probably, go for longer, but I'm probably, from when I've finished playing the game, I'm probably 7 or 8 kgs lighter. I've carry the muscle in different places. I certainly don't, have a strong upper body. Arms, chest, shoulders are much smaller than they used to be. It's muscle groups that I do a little bit of training on, not a lot, because I'm obviously on the mountain bike. You need a strong core. But the rugby players are strong upstairs because they're taking such big contacts, such hard knocks. They're making tackles, being tackled, they're cleaning out. You're quite dependent on having strong upper body. You look at a guy like Cheslin Colby, he looks quite small on the field, and with a rugby jersey on it, he's not particularly huge. When he takes his kit off, he's quite bulky, he's well defined, he's ripped and strong, and he's got big strong shoulders and big strong arms and chest. I think every rugby player now has to be like that. The game is just so physical and so hard.
What are some of the biggest challenges in adapting from explosive rugby fitness to the endurance demands of the Absa Cape Epic, Joel?
So obviously you train differently. You train for it. You do a lot of long, slow hours to build that aerobic base, and then you do some short, sharper stuff on top to make sure you stronger, that you can climb the mountains, you can go up the big climbs, that you can accelerate and race a little bit. But really, I think it's a mindset. It's about they both, and I think that's why rugby players quite enjoy the Epic. This year at the Epic, Morné Steyn was there, Justin Malk in the past. Brayton Polster's done it, John Smith, Butch James. There's been a host of rugby players who've done
Maurice
epic.
Hurter, I recall.
Marius Hurter, John Slade, Jeremy Thompson. There's a long list. I think they are actually, the fundamentals are quite similar. It's about I don't want to say we're all masochists, but it is about being able to suffer. It is about enjoying the training program. It is about putting your body on the line, falling every now and then, because every mountain biker falls at some point. It is about enduring a little bit of pain and suffering and coming through the other side, enjoying the experience. And rugby is like that. You do intense pre-season training. You have your tough sessions in the week, and then on the weekend you go and get smashed by the opposition and you smash them. Mountain biking is the same. You suffer at times. It's hard. There's times where you grimace and wonder what you're doing out there, but there's that great sense of accomplishment in both sports, that when the final whistle goes and you've won, or sometimes lost, or you cross the finish line on the bike, it's there's a sense of satisfaction where you've had this journey as a team with the teammates. You've accomplished something, and you've loved the whole journey to get there, even the tough times.
Sure. Sort of 8 days Cape Absa Epic compared to 80 minutes of rugby. How do you manage the recovery? That must be quite interesting compared to back then.
Yeah, so it is. I think both sports require the same thing. It both requires dedicated training plan, eating plan, recovery plan, and 8 days of epic. I think the thing with epic, when you're doing those long hours consecutively, day after day after day, it's about everything you do today is for tomorrow. So you might ride hard, but you eat and you drink for tomorrow. You make sure your nutrition is good, that when you finish, you have recovery, massage, maybe an ice bath. You immediately getting calories in. You have a recovery shake, rest, get the legs up, sleep, recover, start again. It's in a sense it's like Groundhog Day, but it's they're wonderful days. And remember, you share it with a partner. The last few years, this year I rode with my dear friend Jeff Lee from Absa, and you finish and then you sit down together and you say, right, what do we want? A coffee, like we have a coffee, let's eat. So you eat, and then you shower and massage, whatever it is. But it's all part of this collective journey that you share. It's a special time. It's a very special time.
Lovely, Joel. And with 14 under your belt, absolutely incredible. Does your experience, would you say, in high pressure rugby matches help you push through the toughest moments of this gruelling Absa Cape Epic?
No, because I don't think pressure is something that you sort of feel on the bike. There's no do or die moments. There's no kicks for goal or throw-ins at lineouts. Where there's time to think, and a mistake is costly. When you make a mistake on the bike, you might slip out or have a fall, and so if you're a little worried, you slow down. You're not under pressure. You're not a pro that those 1 or 2 seconds you lose by slowing down into a bend, it's not going to make a difference in your world. So it's a little different on the bike. It's very different on the bike.
Joel, would you say that any of your past rugby injuries have impacted on your training or performance on the bike?
Yeah, very much so. So obviously the bike is good for your knees. It's non-pounding. It's a little more gentle than road running and pounding and taking the hits. So, and I had a knee injury that ended my career a little bit premature. So, I nurse my knee every now and then. I have to look after them. I don't do the heavy weights anymore. If I go to gym, I do light squats and light weights. So it does impact a little bit. But I think the bike has made my knees and my legs strong enough that I can still run a marathon. I did Comrades a couple of years ago, so I'm lucky, I guess. I think I'm fortunate.
I've got to ask you, do you miss the camaraderie of rugby, or do you find a similar case in the team sense, the spirit in terms of cycling?
I find a very similar environment in the world of mountain biking, not cycling, because I think road cycling, you ride alone. When you race, you might race in a team, but actually you ride for you and you alone, I think, most of the time. Maybe at the Tour de France, when you have your domestiques that help the Pogacars of the world, I think they have a role, and there's a team environment there. But mountain biking is quite similar because you ride with a partner in most mountain bike races. So in certainly the multi-stage ones, so you have that camaraderie. Like I live here in Salt Rock now, Belito. We ride with Tyron White and Drivetrain. We probably on a good day has got, if we go out to train, we might be a group of 30 who go out and train together, who go and ride out into the hills somewhere, who do the intervals, go on a long ride, come home together, have coffee, and that brings the team spirit, that brings the sense of community, and it's a wonderful sense of community. It's a bunch of really special people. I mean, I love the community I ride in.
Lovely. With 14 under your belt, are you planning to reach any particular number? Are you aiming at maybe 20, something like that, or when do you think you'll actually?
I don't know. I think I don't know. I guess when you're starting to get a little bit older, like I am, you sort of start wondering about how long you can carry on. And but there was a 70-year-old who did Epic 2-3 years ago. So
that's right. Yeah.
I'm just going to carry on. There's a racing category now for 60 plus.
Yes.
So I'll get there in the next 12 or 13 years. But I'll get there one of these days, and the next 3 or 4 years, and then we'll see. I just love the journey, and as long as I'm fit and healthy and strong, and it keeps me young and keeps the old man out, I'll continue on the journey.
Joel, remember, there's always an e-bike, eh?
No, there's no e-bike. That's for CEOs of companies who want to ride with their sponsor teams and for really old, lazy people.
Jolie, let's get back to 1995. Rugby World Cup, the moment that I suppose you could say it sum it up as defining a nation, that drop goal in the final. Take us back to that moment. What was going through your mind as you lined up? You've probably been asked this question numerous times, not only in interviews on radio, television, in podcasts, but wow, take us back and just remind us of that momentous occasion.
Yeah, so I think probably I would explain it this way. This would be my story. In the build-up to Rugby World Cup, and in particular to the final, Kitch Christie asked me why I don't kick more drop goals. And he planted that seed, So in the week of the final, we worked a little bit more on the drop kicks. We always thought the final against New Zealand would be really close. It would be a titanic battle. We were a little concerned that Lomu would cause chaos and they might get away from us. So we had a plan B in case that happened, if we did concede a few early tries and we had to chase the game. Fortunately, that didn't happen. We stuck to our game. And we were an unbelievably fit side. We always, Kitch always said to us, the fittest team will win the Rugby World Cup. And how right he was. We got into that extra time. It was 9-all and then 12-all. And we called a back row move, 6-7 minutes to go. And when the move was set up and the ball was about to go in the scrum, I could see they'd done their homework and they knew what was coming and they were set to defend it. So I called to Joost and we changed it. And we changed it because there was a gap to kick the goal into. The Mertens was standing a little bit wider. Bishop was very focused on Joost and the scrum. I think he knew he had to follow around when Joost broke right on that back row move. So there was a massive hole, a gaping hole to kick the drop goal into. And, called Joost, made the change. And fortunately, he was in agreement and he sent the ball back to me instead of sending Rudolph Australia around the blind side. And, Ellis Park is a beautiful surface to kick off the ball. When you drop it, it sits nicely. And I hit it sweet. And as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah. How's that all changed your life, Joel?
Well, I think it changed all our lives, didn't it? We all went, obviously for me, it changed, maybe propelled me as the kicker of the drop kick into some other place. But for all of us, it changed all our lives. We went from being, a bunch of young men wanting to play this game that we absolutely love, that gave us so much joy and where we had goals and we were determined to succeed and do well. And I wouldn't say quite no-hopers, but certainly the underdogs. We went from that sort of title where you already are national players and you have an element of fame already. But to win the World Cup in those circumstances and then to be acknowledged in the way we were acknowledged by Nelson Mandela, the great man himself, it propelled us to it propelled us all to like next level, changed all our lives dramatically, cast us into the limelight, into a place, to be fair, where some guys didn't always cope all that well, but certainly for me it was life changing. It did set up a different journey,
It wasn't, as you said, it wasn't all about rugby. It was just about rugby. It was about uniting a country. At what point did you realize, Joel, then that you were part of something that was, I suppose, in essence, bigger than the game?
I think only afterwards, when we went on the national tour and showed the trophy off. I think that was probably the first time it really hit me. As I said, we were just this group of young guys with a goal to win a Rugby World Cup on our home soil, between four lines, playing the sport we absolutely loved. And Madiba came and spoke to us, and he came and saw us, and before the World Cup, we were at Silvermine in Cape Town before the opening game, and then he came into the change room before the final, and we already had a sense that he was behind us and that he wanted to use rugby, as a vehicle. But even though he said it, even though we were told about it, it doesn't change your focus. You are still in that environment, 100% focused on your job on the field, 100% focused on just doing what you've got to do to be the best you can be on match day and to win every game in a Rugby World Cup. I think only afterwards did we really realise what the significance was, when we saw the fans from all demographics, from all cultures, out there on the streets, at the dinners, supporting us, hero worshipping some of us. I think it only then did it, the magnitude of what had happened really set in. And it wasn't necessarily only because we'd won the World Cup. It was because Madiba so wisely made use of the fact and brought us together as a nation, And then I guess when you see Clint Eastwood make a movie about it,
Yep.
and the best part of that movie, of Invictus, wasn't the rugby. It was undoubtedly the story of Nelson Mandela and Rory Stain and his bodyguards and his team of bodyguards, how they all came together, and then how he strategically viewed rugby as a tool that he could try and use to bring a nation together, unite a nation, and then did so post the final whistle going. I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing time for all of us.
You mentioned Madiba was there to greet you at Silvermine in the build-up, in the the preamble. Did you? To me, it was the best kept secret, because I had no idea, having had the opportunity of being there in the stand, I had no idea that Madiba was going to be there. Did you at any stage know that he was going to be present before?
So we did, so I must just go back to Silvermine. So Silvermine is obviously I think it's a Navy base on the side of the mountain, just near Tokai, at the back of Tokai there, almost like above Steenberg Golf Course. And they've got quite a lovely, rugby club there and training ground, and that was before the opening game against Australia, that was our training facility. We spent a lot of time doing a lot of our training there, because it was secret, it was gated, security was easy. And before our last training session at Silvermine, we were told we had to be off the field. It was a morning session. We were told we had to be off the field by 11 for whatever reason. And to be fair, the kickers get grumpy when you're told you can't be on the field later, because you want to be there. When training finishes, you want to stay another half an hour and do a bit more kicking. That's when you get your sort of quality kicking practice in. And so we were all a little miffed, going, we got to get off the field, and we didn't know why. And next thing, this huge military helicopter flew in, and we were inside already. I think we showered, we were in our tracksuits, and Madiba came in, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. We had tea and coffee, and he chatted to us, and he greeted everyone. And he didn't just greet us, he greeted the staff and the cleaning ladies, the helpers, the ladies who made the tea. He was just sensational. It was first time we'd got to meet him, first time we'd been in his company and his presence, and everything you've ever heard about Madiba, everything you've ever heard that's good about Madiba is absolutely true. He was a gentleman, kindness, wisdom, wonderful, wonderful man. And he said that day, he told us he would be at the game and he would help, use rugby to unite our country, and he was very, very supportive. He said he would ensure we had the support of the whole country. And he was good to his word, he did. He went out there and convinced the ANC to support us. He convinced, the man in the street to support us. And by the time we got to the final, when the taxis were, going down the streets on the day of the final, the taxis had Springbok flags hanging out the window. It was a wonderful turnaround.
What was the atmosphere like in the dressing room prior to that final, Joel?
It was obviously stressed, I think, and almost a relief though as well, John, because I think the stress comes in the week of the final. For me, it was always about, Friday night I couldn't sleep because I would stress about the game. Saturday morning when I woke up, the levels would start to ebb. By the time we got in the bus to go to the game, that stress changed to excitement. So I think the change room itself was quite exciting. There's an element of stress there, but you're starting to get dressed and you're starting to warm up and do a bit of stretching, and it's like almost the prologue to the game itself. You're already involved in the game because you're going through like a pre-match routine already, where when you're just waiting at the hotel and you're watching TV, waiting for a meal, and then you're trying to keep your legs up because you don't want to get tired. That's when you bite your nails and the nerves really set in.
I can just imagine. How did Coach Kitch Christie and the leadership in the squad shape the team's mindset during the tournament?
So I think our whole management team had a real wonderful way of dealing with us, and Kitch was this incredible coach who thought deeply, who brought in people who thought deeply about every little element of the game of rugby union. We had, line-out coach, backline coach, kicking coach. In the build-up, we had fitness. We had all these guys, technical advisor. It was really deep thought out. Kitch was also, he was so detailed that he had a mate who worked at one of the senior execs at Disney World, and they, of course, have the most sophisticated weather prediction systems because they want to know who's coming in and who's coming out and what the weather's going to be like. What do they need, more ice cream or more hot dogs? He used to phone his mate and say, what's the weather going to be at Kings Park at that time, and get detailed reports, So the attention to detail was unbelievable from the coaching team. And then we had Morné du Plessis, who was like a fatherly figure to all of us. He just mentored us and put his arm around us and hugged us. And he was an older brother, a father who oversaw the mental wellness and that element of us. So we just had this senior executive management team that looked after us and took care of us in the way that made absolute sense. So throughout the World Cup, there was always attention to detail. There was always wisdom in the way we were treated. There was always a sense of maturity in the way we were treated. And that journey into the final was about, I guess, probably trying to build confidence, because I think New Zealand looked like a powerhouse in the quarterfinal and the semi-final. They almost looked unbeatable in the semi-final, the way they absolutely destroyed England. I think that week for Kitch, it was probably about building confidence, about saying, you're as good as them, if not better. Fitness will be, the key to the World Cup. They can't score against us because we've got the best defence in the World Cup. It was really about picking us up and making sure mentally we were strong and had the self-belief to go into that final. You can't get fitter on the week of a final. You can't become more skillful in 3 or 4 days of training. It was really about the mental elements.
You mentioned the weather buff as well, who would convey that information to Coach Kitch Christie. Wow. What was the feeling ahead of that match against France at Kings Park in Durban, Joel? Wow, with the Super Soppers out.
Yeah.
It must have been quite anxious for you.
Well, I'm not sure anyone predicted the flooding that was there. I don't think not even Disneyland got that right. But there's two sides to that. One is obviously there was stress around the weather, because weather's going to make it tough. It's going to make it a game of attrition, a game of who makes the fewest mistakes, who kicks the ball down there better, whose kicks go over in that howling gale and the wind. But actually, there's also an element of saying, it's pointless getting stressed about it, because actually there's nothing we can do about the rain and the wind and the wind. We just got to go out and do the best we can if and when we get on the field. So, before the game, I think with the delay and everything, there was a bit of stress. But I remember being quite calm in that time. I remember chatting and going outside and talking to, one or two of the guys from the media, Dan Retief, I had a long chat to him. He says he couldn't believe how calm I was at a time like that. But actually, you have to be calm because there's nothing you can do about the circumstances around you. That's the hand that's dealt. That's the hand both teams had to play. And we were just grateful that the game went on, because if it had been called off, obviously we would have lost on the sending off in the earlier game against Canada. But Louis Late made sure the game happened. We went out and played, and tough conditions, wet and dangerous and slippery, and to handle the ball was impossible. It was just a game of physical attrition where you just had to hang in there till the end and hope that the one or two decisions were on your side and that you came out on top.
Not a question of adapting or dying, or a question of adapting or differentiating, but you certainly showed your true mettle in being able to differentiate. Jolly, you've had your fair share of setbacks in your career. What was the toughest moment, and how did you overcome it?
I've had a few tough ones.
Yes.
So the toughest sporting ones, every time you get injured in sport, for me it's really tough, because if I'm probably ADD and maybe even a little ADHD. I'm hyperactive. If I can't train, I get frustrated, and there's pent up energy, and I guess I take it out on those close to me, which are not always good. But my wife is patient with me. But setbacks can be physical or mental. I got asked to leave one of my jobs, and we signed a clause, and I exited, and I didn't want to go because I hadn't completed my mission. It was up, and I cried. I actually cried that day. I think setbacks, dealing in setbacks, is about understanding that however bad the setback is, the sun's going to come up tomorrow.
Yes.
You still have your skill set, your talent, your belief. If you've got pain or physical setbacks, 99% of the time, those will heal in time, and you can start again. You just have to understand that tomorrow is another day, and the sun will shine, and there's another opportunity, and you go again. That's what it is. And keep smiling and go again.
I love that, Jolly. And I also believe that in those terms of adversity, those moments that you've been through, like a lot of us have, a lot of people fighting some kind of a battle. We're not always aware of it, but I think overcoming that adversity is truly, in essence, what one needs to do. And you have certainly shown that you have the mettle, the chutzpah, the determination, the guts, whatever, to be able to overcome those kind of situations. But I think, moreover, it's important, don't you think, to always never undervalue yourself, Joel?
Yes, 100%. 100%. So I don't do a lot of public speaking, probably because I'm too lazy to want to prepare something new every time. And I think you have to tell a different story, else I get bored of telling the same story. But I always make a joke of it. I always say it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. And and I think it was the the American guy who said, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. Actually, I always tell the guys, it's nonsense. If you get knocked down 100 times, then you must change sport. You must change careers, because actually you're not good at what you're doing. But the reality is, if it's not going well, you need to change paths. You need to change direction and take a different turn. But what you need to do is you need to have the courage to make that decision. You need to have the courage to say, that's not for me, I need to find something that is for me. Or you need to say, well, I fell off my bike, as I did in 2017, and I smashed my face and punctured my lung, and I spent time in hospital. But actually, I fell off, and it happens. So when I'm strong enough, I'm going to get back on the bike, and I'm going to go again, and I'm going to get the joy and pleasure from it. And I think that's what life is about. It's about learning from the past. It's about making sure you're more prepared for the next time, and making sure you're on a trajectory and a road where you can get great joy and a great sense of satisfaction when you do achieve your goals.
Confidence is certainly key, as you've illustrated. Were you always this mentally strong, or was it something that you had to develop, Joel?
So I think I do believe you. Mm-hmm. So I actually to explain that simplest for me, I like compare it. I would use an analogy of the goal kicking. People ask me, how come some goal kickers feel the pressure and miss under big pressure and some don't? And I joke about it and say, because some of us were just too daft to really understand the consequences of missing. We just, we didn't think far enough ahead. We were the stupid ones. But actually, I think it's an ability to just stay in the moment, and to your point, to go through the process and stay very focused on that moment and the process, and not worry about everything outside of it. And I think that's what maybe has made me mentally strong. It's I think I was born with an ability to block out the noise and block out the pressure, but also maybe fortunate to be born with this talent and a skill set that every time I got it right, it boosted my confidence and and self-belief. And when you do have that self-belief, you go along believing you're invincible, and you're going to get it. You're going to achieve every time you set your mind to something. It doesn't always happen, and you do miss every now and then. But that belief just comes to the fore later, and you go again.
Yeah, it's certainly proved in high pressure moments, say that you can be so composed, staying composed, and that's something that you've always illustrated. Looking back, if you'd missed that drop goal, do you think that it would have changed how you saw yourself as a player?
No, I don't think it would. So there is like a little part of me that it doesn't resent the drop goal, but it also thinks the drop goal has cast me in a particular role as a kicker of drop goals and a kicker, and you'll never ever hear anyone talking about my running game or my big tackling defensive game, John. But in all the backlines I played in, we always scored a lot of tries. I'd like to think I was a pretty decent running fly who set the backline free. You learned to play flat under Ian McIntosh, and he shared that skill set. When I played at the Leicester Tigers, we played a hell of a running game, but no one ever talks about that. So in a sense, the drop goal has cast me down the one road. I don't think if I'd missed the drop goal, it would have changed my view of me. I think I was fortunate that cometh the hour, cometh the second. I was able at that moment to execute and do it under pressure, and for that I'm enormously grateful. If I had missed, maybe other people would think differently of me, but I certainly I don't mind me. I don't mind if someone else doesn't like me. I don't mind me. I'm happy by myself here.
Sometimes you hear those jokes about certain fly-offs where somebody comes up to them and says, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. I'd like to introduce myself." I'm so-and-so, so-and-so, your inside centre, So,
yeah, I played with you for 5 years, yeah.
Yeah. Rugby has changed massively, though, hasn't it, since 1995? What do you think of the modern game?
So I think the modern game. So what I love about the modern game is that there's just more of it. I don't think people look at it and go, "Oh, it's much more physical and much harder now." I don't think it is more physical or harder. I think it's maybe faster. I think the skill set of the players has changed to maybe everyone has a greater skill. Maybe they're more generalists than specialists, particularly when you see a guy like Rassie picking 7 forwards and 1 back on the bench. You must know everyone can do everything. And that for me is the big difference. It's a little faster, it's a little more skillful, but there's more of it. The ball is in play now. I guess in 1995 the ball was in play for probably 23 minutes of the 80-minute game. Now it's in play for about 37 minutes, I think, statistically. So the players have to be a little bit fitter. They have to, be able to go longer. They have a bigger bench, so some guys only have to play 40 minutes. But it's definitely a little more of it, and it's definitely a bit faster. And the skill set, some of the skills we see are just sensational. I think the tough part of the game now is the laws and the application of high tackle, safety procedures, all these things. I think the game's changed a little bit there, and I don't want to say it's got softer for all the right reasons, because we want our children to play. We want every mommy out there to say it's okay for his son to play rugby, and we want a safe sport for everyone. And I think that is maybe right now where we look at the game and we think the biggest changes are in what we watch. It's the safety elements.
Imagine if you had the bomb squad in 1995.
We didn't need the bomb squad in 1995.
I love the way you put it.
We
I
had
don't think
our
the
own
All
bomb
Blacks
squad.
needed it
They didn't
either.
have a bomb squad, but they were a bomb squad.
Yeah. Gee, when at Twickenham, when we beat the All Blacks, I was quite worried about that ratio, weren't you?
Very, very.
Yeah.
And it came about because of injuries. And I actually made the comment, we'll never ever see that again. And next thing it worked, and we saw it again a week later, I think, or 2 weeks later. It was amazing.
And then the Irish adopted it, I think, more recently as well.
Yeah.
Do they still can you call it the bomb squad still, or is it just unique to us? I wonder.
Well, I think in Ireland, if you call it the bomb squad, you'd have similar connotations to our bomb squad in the early days. It's, I guess, the same dynamic.
Jolly, if the 1995 Springboks played today's Springbok squad, I've often thought to myself, what do you think would happen?
Well, I think they'd probably beat us by a few points, but you must remember we are now like mid-50s. Yeah,
that could be a tricky one. Yes,
and very sadly, 5 of our squad have passed away. No, I think it's very hard to compare across the ages. I think the Springbok squad that Rassie has put together and managed in the last 6-7 years has been sensational, and they're a much more complete team. They, if you think back to '95, we scored tries against Australia, and granted we played in the rain against France, but we battled to break down Romania. We scored nicely against, I guess, Samoa in the quarterfinal. We didn't score in the final. We weren't a team that used the tips of the field, the width. We didn't do great backline moves. We had Andre Joubert, the Rolls Royce of fullbacks who could slot in on the blind side. But we weren't, we weren't a side that used great width and great flair. I'm not saying that our Springboks of present do that, but they certainly have a bigger ability to do it, I think, than we see. Tony Brown's been brought in to help that. We saw it a little bit in the first test against Ireland last year, actually, but I think we've got a bit of work to do there. But this squad, and I say squad because I think right now we could probably pick 2 sides that would compete on the world stage. This squad is an amazing squad. I mean, the talent we have there. And yes, some of them are getting old now. That is the big concern we have. Will they be around in 2 years' time? Even Etzebeth is battling with concussion. Some of this team, in their mid-30s already. Are they on the slippery downhill? More than likely. Can they still deliver? Absolutely. But this team of the last 6 years has been just sensational. The way they've grown, the way they've come together under Rassie, under the unbelievable captaincy of Siya Kolisi. I mean, what a leader he is. The senior players, how they put their hand up week in, week out, how they put their bodies on the line. Eben Etzebeth, Oxen Chair. There's a long list there. It's just amazing. It's an amazing group of players. Again, hard to compare across the ages, but it's 2 amazing it's 2 amazing teams, to be quite frank.
Yeah. Often when I look at fly-offs, I think of you often because I was privileged to have been at the '95 Rugby World Cup and to see you in action. But I often think to myself, I wonder what would remind Joel in terms of today's game of himself. What would remind you of yourself? Or what in today's game reminds you of yourself?
Of the players, yeah. So I think, so if I look at the Springboks setup right now, the fly-offs that are in the mix there are very different to me, very different to the way I play the game. Andre Pollard, big, strong, powerful, quite direct. I think our fly-off in the next few years will be Sasha Feinberg Zulu. I think he is just this athletic, and he's a big kid. We don't always see him as a big kid, but he's a big guy. So he's strong, powerful, but he steps. He's got pace. He's got attributes. Mani Lubok is probably a little bit smaller, a little bit more of a playmaker, of a real bright, clever fly-off who's able to play guys into space. I weigh now 81 kgs, 80 kgs. When I finished playing, I was 85, 86 kgs. So probably small as well, small and light, and not never going to be the guy who smashes guys back or who bullies his way over the gain line. Probably a little bit more like like Mani Libok, I guess. But I think I was more of a controlling froth, maybe like a. I'm trying to think who.
Maybe a Johnny Wilkinson. I think he reminded
Yeah,
me a little bit of you.
Johnny as well. He was a real controlling fluff.
Johnny Sexton, that sort of
Yeah,
kind of.
Johnny Sexton. So he was never really big in contact, but always the link and always playing players
Yes,
around him. Yeah, probably
yes,
a little bit like that
yeah, yeah.
type of fluff, type of player. Yeah.
Hmm. You played against some of the greatest players in history. Who was the toughest opponent that you ever faced?
So I think as a fly-off, you sort of never look up at another fly-off and go, "It's really tough." I mean, because fly-offs, we're not tough. Let's be quite frank, we're not the toughest things around. Um, I
Mentally tough like yourself, though.
mentally, yeah. So I think Zinzan Brook would be the guy I've faced and played against quite a lot, whether it was for South Africa against New Zealand or, in the UK playing for Leicester
Yeah.
against him. Even in Italy, I played against him once or twice. I think he was huge, and he had he's a really, I love him dearly, but he had a big head, so that
Yes.
head was always in the way, and we used to call him the Ranoster Colfie because his head was so big.
And he wouldn't
But he
have
was
understood
hard
what
to
that meant.
tackle. Yeah, he was hard to tackle. He was hard to bring down. He had a low centre of gravity. He ran over me once or twice in test matches. He kicked a drop goal in the World Cup from 40 metres out.
Sure,
He,
remember
he,
that.
yeah, he was the toughest guy. I'll tell you who the toughest guy I think I ever played with. Mark Andrews was up there. But I played at Leicester with Martin Johnson, with Neil Back.
Yeah.
Back, he was small, but oh my word, he was hard as nails and tough. And Martin Johnson was just this guy. He didn't say a whole lot, but boy, he did a whole lot on the field. A hard man, great.
Yeah.
That's why he captained the Lions. That's why he captained England to a World Cup victory.
What is one lesson, Joel, that you probably have learnt from rugby that has carried with you into life after the sport?
So I've learned a lot of lessons, and actually I think the lessons I've learned from rugby are the lessons that I would preach to young kids. I would preach to everyone that they're the lessons of how you need to live your life, whether it is work and business, whether it is a relationship, wife, family, kids, husband, whatever it is. I think, and it's that sense of community and actually Jason Leonard's got a wonderful charity, the Atlas Foundation. I have a charity. He has a charity. His foundation teaches the core values of rugby and teaches them as life principles. And really, for me, it's quite simple. It's about integrity. If you are not honest in your training, if you're not honest on the field, you're letting people around you down, you'll never succeed. It's about hard work, because if you don't put the work in, you're not going to achieve anything. In life, there's no shortcuts. Every now and then you win the lotto, or you get lucky, or you do one big deal and you get some money. But actually in life, that's not normally how it works. Normally in life, it is about hard work. And then it's about, and I've realized this from maybe after rugby, from the mountain biking, and actually from this present Springbok squad, who have a great love for each other. It's a brotherly love. It's when you see that team together and they greet each other and they give each other a hug. It's not a hug, oh, how's it nice to see you. It's a proper hug filled with love and admiration. And I think that's what for me what life is about. It's about integrity. It's about being honest when no one's looking. It's about how you behave. It's about integrity and honesty. It's about putting in the hard work and the hours, and it's about loving those around you. And love really is respect. So I think for me, those are the three things that stand out. Those are the three principles from sport that I try and live my life by.
Lovely messages, I must admit. But you must admit, we've seen it along the way. Many of the athletes struggle with identity after retirement. Was it difficult for you to transition out of professional rugby? I think you've done remarkably well, because it's the old saying, out of sight, out of mind. But you went from playing to commentary, business, endurance racing. I mean, how did rugby prepare you for life after sport in that respect? And what advice would you give in terms of the question many athletes struggle with identity after retirement? Yeah,
it's a tough one, I think. And actually, I'm involved with a small project with World Rugby around brain health. And brain health is obviously part of it is the concussion issues that we're seeing in the game now, the safety issues, early onset dementia, whether it's a result of concussion or just old age, because a lot of people get it. And so brain health is more than that. It's also about dealing with depression and those elements post rugby, post a career in the limelight, where you're not in the limelight anymore, and you have to change your whole life to maybe think and spend and live differently, because you don't have the ability to earn all that money anymore. You have to do things differently. I think I was lucky. I transitioned quite easy, and maybe I transitioned easy because I'm not someone who dwells in the past. I look forward. I set new goals. I want to achieve the next part of my journey. And sometimes, as I said earlier, you have to, if you've been knocked down too many times doing the same thing, you need to change your course, and I think you have to make that decision. For me, I look forward. I don't look back. It's not part of who I am. I love the game of rugby still. It's given me so much. I like to talk about what's going on now and what will happen in the future, but we don't often dwell on the past. And that for me is, what life is about. And it's tough. I understand those who've suffered and who've battled and who haven't, found their place. But you've got to change tack a little and accept that life is going to change, and you've got to change with it. I had this dear friend, Colin Jennings, who did a lot of in my corporate life. I had him come and train my sales teams and some of my execs quite often, and he had this little saying which. He spoke a lot about attitude, but the one thing he always said, if it ain't broke, fix it. And really his message was, whatever happens, you have to think forward, you have to evolve, you have to keep changing, you have to be part of the movement forward rather than sitting in the same place. Because if you are the best at what you do and you're treading water and staying there, people are working hard to catch you and overtake you, whether it's a business, sport, life, marriage, whatever it is. You have to always be on that wheel of trying to improve, trying to be better. And I think that's the story of life. You have to accept what's behind you is behind you, and you've got to move forward and make the most of your circumstances and set new goals and find a way to find fulfillment in your next journey, in your next adventure.
So much we can take out of that, and great positive advice. Thank you, Joel. I love the one, you get knocked down, you get up again. It's a Chumbawamba song. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Yeah. I love that, and there's so many facets to that as well. But Jolly, if you could sort of relive is what I wanted to say. One of your in your career, not necessarily the final, but which one do you kind of remember vividly, apart from the final, that would stick out most? So
that's a great question, John, and I'll tell you why, because it goes to my last point about moving forward and not dwelling on the past. So when I was at the Leicester Tigers and I suffered my knee injury and I had to stop playing, I was asked by a reporter, what is the highlight of your rugby career? And I thought about it, and a few weeks, well, maybe a year or so before that, he said, it was about the kick. He said, which was the greatest kick you ever kicked? And I listed 4 for him. I said, I'm not sure which one was the best one. I don't remember what year it was, but I think it might have been 1988 or 1989. Mm-hmm. The Natal Sharks, I think we were still the Banana Boys then, we were just becoming the Sharks. We played those flippin' purple people eaters from Welkom in a night game. I kicked a left-footed drop goal to win, I think, 2018 with seconds to go. It's probably the greatest kick of my career. Then came the World Cup and the drop goal. And then not long after that, I moved to the UK and playing for the Leicester Tigers. We beat Saracens in a cup game at Saracens. And they had in that team, Francois Pienaar, my dear friend. They had, I think, Philippe Seller, Michael Liner, I think Timmy Horan, I think Jeremy Thompson.
Wow.
And they had a hell of a team. But listen, we at the Leicester Tigers, we had a hell of a team too. I kicked a drop goal in that game that Francois tried to charge down, and I think we won that knockout game. It was a cup game as well, I think. It might have been a league game. And we won it like 25-24 because of a drop goal. And for me, that kick was as wonderful as the World Cup final. And it was as wonderful because it was what was required at the time. It was looking forward, And then I think of when I played at the Tigers, some of the breaks I made, some of the backline tries we scored, some of the things we did, like the interpassing, the one pass I played Tim Stimson, those were all wonderful moments. I don't think you can ever look back and say, there's one absolute moment on the rugby field that it might be defined by the public or by perception, but deep down inside, for me, there were loads of those moments. There were loads of those moments that I absolutely loved, and I was privileged to be on the field at that moment.
I wish I could have watched that Leicester Saracens game. Unbelievable. It sounded incredible, and your passion and thinking back to that particular game, incredible. A lot of rivalry, great team spirit, that sort of thing. How do you think that the game has evolved, though, Joel, since your playing days?
Yeah, we spoke about it. I think obviously the game on the field has evolved. I think the tournaments and the structure has reached a point now where it's a little bit messy, and the problem is I have mixed views on this. The problem is we have this 12-month calendar season now, and yes, the players don't play for the full 12 months. They have weeks off here and weeks off there, but actually we need a global calendar like football has. We need to have a period where for 3 months there's no rugby and the players can have a proper rest. Their time is monitored already, amount of time on the field, number of starts, amount of time on the training ground. There's great science going into it. I think they probably play less minutes than we used to play, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what we do need is to find a global calendar that says, right, whether it is, the 15th of May to the 30th of August is proper off-season. We need a global calendar. And unfortunately for us now, it needs to, we've slot into mostly the Northern Hemisphere, but still a little bit into the Southern Hemisphere because of the Sanzar Rugby Championship. So the game's at a little bit of a junction from a safety perspective where there's a lot of work being done, but it's at a point where we need, from a overall confusion in the marketplace, we need clarity. We need to say, right, that's the season. This time of year we play Vodacom United Rugby Championship. At that point we play Investec Champions Cup. That's the test window. Then there's the Currie Cup window, and then there's the test window at the end. It needs clarity from that perspective.
How do you see the Springboks evolving under the new leadership post-2023, Joel?
I think it's a massive challenge right now. I think there's still great players, but I think right now isn't what we need to worry about. It's 2 years' time at the next Rugby World Cup. If you think about the fact that we have so many players in their, not even in their early 30s, but in their sort of almost mid-30s, it is a concern. It becomes even more important, I guess, to manage the time and effort. Else you have a situation where the best player in the world, Eben Etzebeth, hasn't played for 3 months now, and that's concussion issues. So we don't want that. We're blessed in this country in that we have this wonderful schools rugby that we see week in, week out, where we just churn out talent after talent after talent, plethora of talent, and they come through the ranks and the whole world wants them. We've got players playing everywhere. We've got players getting snapped up in Scotland and France, all over the show. I think now it's about managing the evolution into the new team, and that's Rossi's biggest challenge right now. I think when you consider some of the great youngsters coming through, the likes of, Cameron Hanekom, Sasha van Ngomazulu, some of the outside backs, the loose forwards, we know Oxenchair and some of the tight forwards will still be there for a few years. I think just managing that change is the biggest thing. Change, and there's another thing in life. There's two things. They say there's two things we all know. One is we pay tax, and the two is we're going to die. I think in rugby, there's going to be change and there's going to be evolution, and you're going to have to at some point pass the mantle on, pass the jersey on to the next player. We're at that point now where that process is happening. It's being managed. And we just have to see whether it's, whether it's managed smooth enough by 2025 for the next, or 2027 for the next Rugby World Cup.
Do you think rugby's current laws are improving or hurting the game as a spectacle?
I think the game is a great spectacle. I think the confusion is still around safety. There's also some science to say the fact that we are forcing players to tackle around the hips, there's more injuries, there's more concussion caused by hip to head injuries than there is from shoulder to head. So, I think there's some perfecting that needs to be done. But I think the The one thing that concerned me 6 or 8 months ago was the time that the TMO was taking to make decisions. I think we've seen some nice innovations in terms of how quickly that's being managed. We've got the bunker system and the upgrade. I think right now rugby's probably in a good space. I think it is in a good space. It's a great spectacle. We're seeing, and what I love about the new fan base is we're seeing a lot of young people in the stadiums. And by that, I'm not talking about the children. The children are coming back because the parents want to be there, and those are young parents and students, and there's like a whole young community, and following their teams. If you look at the DHL Stadium, Cape Town Stadium, you look at Hollywood Bet Kings Park, it's the dynamic of the fan base is completely multicultural, multi-age group, fun-loving, screaming for their team, having a great day out, and I think that bodes well for the game.
Charlie, it's been absolutely fantastic listening to your insights, and thank you for availing a lengthy period of your time to chat to me on my podcast, Beyond the Glory. It's been absolutely incredible chatting to you. I just wanted to ask you, in conclusion, what's your take on South African players moving overseas at a younger age?
So I think, like I have mixed feeling, because I think if we can keep more of our youngsters here and we have a stronger base and a more competitive base, that strength breeds strength. If you think back when we've always been at our best, it's because we've had such a competitive internal rugby structure where we've had the best playing against the best week in, week out, and that breeds even better players. It makes everyone mentally hard, physically hard. Having said all that, I think financially, with the weak rand and a strong pound, strong euro, if I were CEO of SA Rugby, or I was in Russie's shoes as wearing his director of rugby's cap, I wouldn't mind if my young players were playing at the top clubs in Europe. And I say that because they get great exposure, great competition. They're playing rugby at a high level week in, week out. So that competitive element is taken care of. They also are very professionally managed by a wonderful medical team at all those clubs. All those leagues have similar guidelines to what he would want in terms of how many hours, how many minutes the players play matches and train. So I think that whole management structure is in place, and then he has access to them whenever he wants them. And most importantly for the players, they have big earning capability then. They can go and earn a proper salary. They can put money away. They can set themselves up for life. So actually it's a win-win-win. The only slight loss is that they're not playing here on our shores, and our system is maybe a fractionally weaker. But then I look at all the talent coming through, and I think, Sherbet, we've got so much talent coming through, we're always going to have a strong structure anyway. So let them go and play there. Let them go and earn their money. Let them, just like you and I, we want to be paid as much as we can be paid for what we do. The guys are, able to go off there and capitalize. It makes perfect sense to me.
Oh, beautiful. Certainly has made perfect sense chatting to you as well. Thank you very much indeed once again, Joel, and for this valuable time. It's been fascinating listening to your insights. May you continue, your family, to go from strength to strength in all your future endeavors. Thank you for doing and for having contributed so much to a very, very successful society in terms of sport. We all know that sport certainly unites us, and you certainly have played a huge role in that. Thank you very much. Honor and a privilege to have chatted to you on Beyond the Glory. Take care, Jolly.
Thank you very much, John. It's been lovely chatting, and to you, I know you're as passionate about your sport as I am, and you love it, and your heart and soul is in it. Thank you for everything you do. Thanks for chatting.
Thank you, my friend. Jolly,
cheers, John. Take care, right?
You too, my friend. Bye, Jolly.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Glory. We appreciate every listen, like, and share. It means the world. Be sure to follow us on social media and keep the conversation going. And if you haven't already, check out our band link at https://band.link/Beyond Glory, full stop. And that's where you'll find all our latest episodes, platforms, and more. Stay locked in. More inspiring stories and powerful moments are coming your way. Until next time, keep pushing beyond the glory.